So today we're going to look at the new basic questions, sections 1-6 to 110. And these are effective July 15th, 2025. So we'll review a number of questions each week. The left side is the actual exam question. The right-hand side shows a summary of the key materials, and any new questions are in bold. So there are 8 sections, and we're still on number 1. So we're doing now.
Roy, sorry.
Yes,
Why is this being recorded?
in case people want to look at it, we may use it for some courses in the future.
Oh.
So we're going to look at 6 to 10 now, which basically talks about the operation and qualifications of radio stations. So, here's a question. So, a person that is operating a radio station must be under the supervision of someone holding an amateur radio operator certificate and the call sign, regardless of the power. Here, basically you're only allowed to communicate with an amateur radio station to other amateur radio stations with similar authorizations. And then also, under what circumstances can you use an amplifier to amplify the output of a license exempt transmitter? And the answer is that this is not permitted. This is a new question. When is it permissible to use amateur radio equipment with or without modification to transmit outside the amateur radio bands? And the answer is B, never. Amateur radio equipment is not certified for operation outside amateur radio bands. So you're not allowed to.
Wasn't that a given? I mean, that was mentioned in the course, but it's just that it was never formulated as part of the question, right?
Yes, it's now it's become a question. There is
it's crystallized, I guess.
Crystallized, but there is also another question coming up that's slightly different.
To me, that's a giveaway question, because with a to transmit outside, transmit outside amateur radio bands, right away, those few words right there gives away the whole. That question is easy.
Well, the key here is that, for amateur radio, it's amateur radio to amateur radio. And
right.
There's very few exceptions. But this is a new question that they've come up with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes it different.
Okay. Here's another question that's one of the negative ones. Unfortunately, these sections here have not really been updated that much. So this is, which of the following statements is not correct? So any person may operate radio apparatus authorized in the amateur radio band. So B, only if the person complies with the standards of operation of the radio stations of the radio amateur service, only if the apparatus is maintained to the performance standards set out by ISED as per regulations and policy. And this is sort of a double negative here, not except, which means yes, you can amplify the output, but not from license exempt radios. So the answer that is not correct is on aeronautical, marine, and land mobile frequencies. So again, emphasizing amateur radio is from amateur radio to amateur radio. Here's another question. Some radios purchased for use in amateur radio can be programmed to communicate on frequencies used for land mobile radio. Under what conditions is this permissible? So if you have a radio that is certified and licensed for use on land mobile radio service. So it's got to be licensed for amateur radio service and for land mobile service. So here's another question here. Which, what can you talk on the use of amateur radio? This is the next section. So basically no business planning, and also no broadcasting to the general public. It's never allowed.
I don't know if you noticed, Mike V7 CHF was his call sign. He was using the word rock twice.
Yep.
Anyhow.
Here's another one. Here's another one of the not statements, which is not correct. So, which of the following statements is not correct? Courteous amateur radio operator refrains from using offensive language. An amateur radio operator does not obscure the meaning of their transmissions. A considerate amateur radio operator does not transmit unnecessary signals. So the answer that's not correct is C. An amateur radio operator may conduct occasional business on the air. Here's another one of these not questions. Which of the following one-way communications may not be transmitted on the amateur radio service? So you are allowed to make brief transmissions to make adjustments to the station. You can do Morse code practice, and you can do radio control commands to model aircraft, but you're not allowed to broadcast to the general public. So the answer is C. Here's some more questions. This has to do with digital coding. When are you allowed to code your signals? And the answer is you're only allowed to code your signals if the code is published in the public domain. Or down here is when can you transmit an encoded message? And again, only when the encoding or cipher is not secret. Here's some questions about use of amateur radio. So what are the restrictions on the use of abbreviations of procedural signals in amateur radio? They can only be used if they are not secret. And down here, when should you keep your amateur radio station from retransmitting music signals from a non-amateur radio signal? So to prevent this, you turn down the volume of the background audio so you're not transmitting something else that's in the background, like a radio playing or music. Again, a question about secret code. So transmission of a secret code on amateur radio station is not permitted. And then here's a slight exception. An amateur radio signal may be engaged in communications, including the transmission of, so Q codes are allowed because they're publicly known and not secret. Here's another question. In the amateur radio service, business communications are not permitted under any circumstance. So again, no business communications or business planning. So 8 talks about qualifications. So where may holders of amateur radio operator certificate operate a radio station in Canada? So they can operate anywhere from Canada. And then what type of station may transmit a one-way communication? And that would be a beacon station. Beacon just transmits. Here is a new question. What minimum qualification must an amateur radio operator hold to assemble commercially available transmitter kits of professional design? So you need to
Okay,
hold...
Roy, go back to the question before, prior to that.
Yes.
The one before that, B10802. the one prior to this. Go back again. Yeah. No, 02. 10802.
802?
0010080002.
Okay, so 8, that we're on 7.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
but you were at 8, or was it? Oh,
Oh, right
yeah,
there.
right
8.
here. This one here, 0010080002. What about repeater stations when they do a automatic station identification?
Yeah, that would be a one-way communication, but
Yeah.
but then they do two-way communication the rest of the time if someone's using it. A beacon station is only one way, regardless.
I know,
of,
but isn't it? I'm just arguing the point. Like
Yeah.
a beacon station is set to establish one-way communication, not expecting a reply. But isn't that similar to a repeater station when it automatically transmits the station identification message, not expecting a reply as well?
Yeah, it is, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not voice, it's not automatic, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
but
just-
in terms of I mean, the question here is which one is more right? So the beacon station is more right than a repeater station.
True. Yeah, okay.
So here's a new question. What is the minimum qualification must an amateur radio operator hold to assemble commercially available transmitter kits of a professional design? So that's a basic qualification. And remember, this is a kit that's professionally available.
Yeah,
and
that's what I was
commercially-
gonna say.
And commercially available.
Yes, exactly what I was
Weird.
gonna say. Key words, commercially available, professional design.
So what are the minimum qualifications for an amateur radio operator to install a repeater operating on a single band in a voice mode? Again, that would be basic and advanced to install a repeater. Here is a question. What are the minimum qualifications to install a radio operator hold to install an amateur radio station? And here again, it's basic and advanced. And then what are the minimum qualifications must an operator hold to install or operate a transmitter or RF amplifier that is neither professionally designed nor commercially available for use in the amateur radio service? So in this case, you would have to hold the basic and advanced qualification because it's not commercially available and not professionally designed. So you need both basic
You
and
mean
advanced.
manufactured word. You said available. Manufactured.
Commercially manufactured, yes. Here's a new question. What's the minimum qualification must an operator hold to operate a crossband repeater? So that would be just the basic qualification to operate
Yeah, it's
a crossband
because
repeater.
crossband repeaters were never mentioned, I think,
Yeah.
in the question. This is, yeah.
That's
good.
something new. Here's another new question. What is the minimum qualification must an amateur operator hold to remotely operate a transmitter, include changing frequency, emission mode, and output power? So the answer here is basic and advanced to operate a transmitter remotely. Although there are being attempts made to change this, at the moment it's basic and advanced. So number 9, section 9 deals with the station owner and the control operator. So there can actually be 3 people involved in operating a radio station, amateur radio station, although most commonly it's all one person. So who is responsible for the operation of an amateur radio station? So the answer here is B, both the control operator and the station owner. Now, if you transmit from another amateur radio station who is responsible for its operation. So basically, both of you. So the station owner and you as the control operator.
I don't
Who-
know, well, I don't know about those last two, Roy. There's no mention of being a qualified station owner. You know, they don't mention being certified. That's, to me, that's a missing element.
I think they mention it somewhere later on.
Yeah, but that should be in this question, station owner. Or I mean, doesn't say whether the station owner is qualified. So how can you say there that they can, or, you know, they can transmit? It's a little bit,
Well, that's defined in another section.
yeah, but the question itself, though.
Yeah.
There should be
So
another,
when they say station, radio station, they mean you're the actual, not the station itself, but you are responsible for, like, say, V7GOG. You would be,
Don't forget,
Mhm.
station owner means someone's got a call sign.
yeah, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
someone who owns it proprietary,
okay, does it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Okay.
station-
as opposed to, you know, the
Yeah,
person who
I
owns the
think that's what it
building.
implies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so that
The call
Yeah.
sign, yeah, you have to have a call sign to be a station, right? So,
Yeah. Okay, so that's where they cover it then,
yeah.
yeah.
What is the responsibility as a station owner? So the answer is D. You are responsible for the operation of the station in accordance with the regulations. So the regulations would mean you would need a call sign and you would have to be qualified or certified according to the regulations. Who may be the control operator of an amateur radio station? Again, here, any qualified amateur radio operator chosen by the station owner. So the station owner, if it's not the same person, would be responsible to make sure that the control operator is qualified. When must an amateur radio station have a control operator? Whenever the station is transmitting. When an amateur radio station is transmitting, where must its control operator be? So the answer here is C, at the station's control point. So that could be, near the radio, near the power switch, anywhere that they could take control if something happens to go wrong.
If you want to be technical, it's the person that has the finger on the PTT. Because that's where the control point determines whether the message is transmitted or not.
But in
Yeah,
the next question, it sort of allows other people to transmit as long as you're there under supervision.
Yeah, that would be a third-party operator under those guidelines.
Yeah, but if the station owner goes for a bathroom break, you're not allowed to transmit.
Correct. No, those are rules. You have to be like
Yeah.
physically to
Yeah.
pull the plug. If
Yeah.
let's say that third party starts breaking the rules.
So here's
That's why
question:
you have to physically be there to
Yeah.
prevent that from happening.
why can't family members without qualifications transmit using your amateur radio station if they're alone with your equipment? So the answer is C. They must be under suitable amateur radio qualifications before they're allowed to be control operators. And then here's another question. The owner of an amateur radio station may permit any person to operate the station under the supervision and in the presence of the holder of an amateur radio license, operator certificate. So this allows other people to operate it as long as you're under supervision of a person that holds operator certificate. And here's another question, one of the not questions. So under what circumstances can a person who does not have an amateur radio operator certificate operate an amateur radio station? So the incorrect answers are when a person is actively enrolled in an amateur radio course, when a person holds a valid license in land mobile or marine services, when the person has been briefed over the telephone by a person holding the appropriate qualifications. So these are all the wrong answers. The correct answer is C, when the person is under the supervision and in the presence of a person holding appropriate qualifications. So now we're getting into operator interference. So when a transmission disturbs other communications, it is called harmful interference. When may you deliberately interfere with another amateur radio station communications? There, the answer is deliberate interference is never acceptable. If the regulations say the amateur radio service is a secondary user of a frequency band and another service is the primary band, the primary user, what does it mean? So this means that amateur radio operators are allowed to use the frequency band only if they do not cause interference with the primary users. So the primary users have a priority. What rule applies if two amateur radio operators want to use the same frequency? So here, both station operators have an equal right to operate on the frequency. So no one has more right than the other to operate on the frequency. What name is given to a form of interference that seriously degrades, obstructs, or repeatedly interrupts the radio communication service? So that is known again as harmful interference. And then in the event the Minister of ISED determines that an amateur radio station causes harmful interference, what are the minister's powers? So they can order the station's operation to cease or change. Here is a question. Amateur radio operation must not cause interference to other radio services operating on which of the following bands? So it's the UHF band because there are amateur radios typically a secondary user, and commercial have use on the UHF band. So it's a shared service on that band. Here's another not question. So amateur radio operators are not protected from interference caused by another service operating in which of the following frequency bands? So in this case, it's the 902 megahertz to the 928 megahertz band. This is a band that's normally used for things like telephones, Wi-Fi, baby monitors, things like that. So if you're interfered with, you don't have any. You're not protected from any interference if you're using this band. Typically, amateur radio operators don't use this band except if they're doing some transmissions in getting up into the microwave region. Under what circumstances may the operator of an amateur radio station conduct test transmissions? So the answer is here, when the transmission will not cause interference to stations in the amateur radio service or other services. So you can do some testing, but you can't cause any interference to anyone else. So here's another question. Which of the following amateur radio bands may be heavily occupied by license exempt devices? So in this case, license exempt devices are again from the 902 megahertz to the 928 megahertz. There's also some medical equipment that operates in this frequency range too. And most of these devices are license exempt. And so that's the completion of that. Next week, we'll go from 11 to 15. So that's the review of those questions.
Thank you for that.
Okay, let me
Uh,
just stop the recording.